So we're going to continue talking about abiding today. And specifically, we're going to talk about fruitfulness being the byproduct of abiding. We got to do a little bit of abiding with my folks up at Depot Bay for a couple days. And it was such a sweet time with the Lord. And speaking so and pouring out His grace, pouring out His heart to us in such real, tangible ways. And one of the things that He kind of deposited into us as we were talking and meditating on fruitfulness was this time of offering. And we're going to start making a declaration in our offering about its fruitfulness. And so we're gonna do an act right now where this is not a religious duty or anything other than you get to partner with the Lord and you get to be a son and a daughter and take on His nature as a giver. God is a giver, and He freely gives Himself away to us in all of His fullness. And so what He wants you to know is that in the giving, there is a return, there's a reciprocation, there is intended to always be, if it's done God's way, that as we give, we receive. In fact, that's one of the spiritual and principles that's even placed in the universe, that the way that we receive is we actually become givers. The way that we receive is we become givers. Now, the way the world tells us to receive is to take and hold and save and invest for my own benefit. But in the kingdom, we are to be givers. And so what we want to do today is have an opportunity for us to partner with the Lord, and we're going to practice a tangible act of fruitfulness. And so if you have an offering this morning and you want to give, then you can bring it up into one of the buckets. One of the things that I say all the time is that, sometimes our offering isn't about something monetary, something that is dealing with our finances, but is dealing with a place in our heart, is dealing with something that might be taking up as a counterfeit connection, as we've been talking about, that needs to be laid down. So we're bringing our offering to the Lord, and then we're going to make a declaration together over our offering this morning. If you have something that you want to bring to the Lord that's not money, we do have some 3x5 cards in the back that you are welcome to use to write out. I love when people are writing out love letters to God, or they're writing out declarations of their adoration or their devotion to Him or their obedience to Him. They're giving Him their burdens. Did you know that when you give your burdens to God, it can be an offering? I don't know if you guys heard me. This is the only place on the earth where you can bring your trash and it's called an offering. Serious. Because those burdens, those things that weigh us down, those heavy things, are actually things that cause that disconnection from God. We read that in 1 Peter 5. We've meditated on that over the last couple months. That it's those cares and those concerns, those things that weigh us down, that create this breach, because we're more concerned about the problem than we are connected to the problem solver, the promise keeper. So you can bring your burden. In fact, He invites you to come and cast it. All your cares. Cast all your cares on Him. Cast all your cares on Him. Don't pick them back up. Don't put them back in your pocket as you walk out the door. Cast all your cares on Him, because He is careful with you. Careful with you. So here's what I want you to do. I need 4 people to come and grab a bucket. Just one bucket. Whoever the first 4 are that grab one. I don't care. All right. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ask the Holy Spirit where He wants you to go stand, and go stand there right now. There's no wrong answer, just wherever He tells you to stand. Amen. So I want you to hold your bucket up. Hold it up high above your head. We're going to declare this together, okay? We're going to declare together over this. This is our offering. This is our heart of worship. This is our devotion to Him. This is our obedience to Him. And we're going to declare, be fruitful and multiply. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Be fruitful and multiply. Say it again. Be fruitful and multiply. One more time. Be fruitful and multiply. Amen. Amen. Glory. You guys can put them down. So that's just not about increase in finances. That's about the offering that you're bringing to Him today from your heart. That everything that you are bringing to the Lord actually goes to Him and comes back to you bigger. Amen. Amen. Fruitfulness. Everybody say fruitfulness. I'm actually really excited about getting to talk about this today. So we have been on this incredible journey with the Lord speaking to us in the face of all that the enemy has been saying and all that's been happening in our world. The Lord has been releasing His word and speaking to us specifically about what He is doing. He's awakening His sons and daughters. That's what He's doing. He's awakening the bride. He's bringing us into the reality that we were not made for a Sunday service for an hour and a half once a week. You are made for a personal, intimate, real relationship with God 24/7. Now, you might go to sleep, but He is the God that does not sleep or slumber. And so we've been talking about all night long. He's singing over you. He's speaking over you. He's declaring over you. So that first moment when you open your eyes in the morning is a wonderful time for you to connect and hear what the Father's been speaking and doing over you all night long. So we have learned that we are not just saved. We're not just cleaned up for heaven. We've actually been redeemed back into perfect wholeness and oneness with the Father in our beloved identity. Say beloved identity. This is the revelation that takes us beyond the cross. You're not just identified in Christ. You're identified as a son or a daughter. That's the best news. As a son or daughter, it was always His perfect plan to adopt you as His beloved child, as Ephesians. So we have been talking about this word abiding, and that the only way for us to actually step into our beloved identity, for us to become what He's saying that He's created us to be, we have to learn this thing called abiding. And we've been spending a lot of time in the Gospel of John and also in the book of Romans, specifically chapter 8, and also Ephesians chapter 1 and 2. And all of these things are teaching us that through abiding, we learn how to stay connected. We learned that the purpose of us being abiding in Him, that becoming beloved children of God, is so that we would fulfill Romans chapter 8, which says that the whole earth is groaning for the mature sons and daughters of God to be revealed. So it's not just the revelation that I'm a beloved child, it's the walking into, now I get to mature into that as a son or daughter. So that we're really focusing on the maturing process right now. Because what happens is when we're mature in the Lord, we get this picture in the scriptures of a tree planted along the streams of living water. So close your eyes for just a second, and I want you to just get that picture. Some of you might have seen some of Helen's prophetic paintings about this, but I want you to let the Lord bring a picture into your mind right now of you being a tree planted along the stream of living water. This is a stream, this is a river that flows right from the throne of God, right from his presence. It's him. He is the stream. He is the life giver. And as you mature, what happens is your roots begin to grow down deep. So deep that you begin to become nourished by the very water of the river. You're not waiting for rain. You're not waiting for the season to change. You've come into this place of being rooted and connected to the very source of life. Therefore, it says in the word, your leaves will never wither, and your fruit will always be in season. You will always be producing fruit. It goes on to declare that your leaves are the healing for the nations. The Lord spoke to me back in 2014, and I was getting this revelation of this, of this tree, and I got a prophetic word, and he said to me, your limbs are a shelter for the broken and the hurting. Your limbs are a shelter for the broken and the hurting. You become like your Father. He is a strong tower where anyone can come and run into him and come under the covering. That's what happens when we become mature oaks of righteousness, where our leaves never wither, our roots grow down deep, and we're always producing fruit. We become a beacon. We become a tree of life that others can come to and eat from, that others can come to and get healing, that others can come to. So this is why the Lord is speaking this so profoundly right now, is because we know that we are living in a broken world. We're living in a time of brokenness that's different. It doesn't mean it's worse than any other time. It's just a different kind of brokenness. And I will let you know, the church has not been prepared for the last 30 years to deal with, or 40 years, to deal with the brokenness of these generations. We've been out to lunch. We have been asleep. We've been more concerned about our comforts. We've been more concerned about a 401k. We've been more concerned about the clothes that we're wearing. We've been more concerned about meeting our own personal needs than we have been about our relationship with God. We thought we had taken on this Pharisaical mindset. As long as I'm, saying my prayers before I eat, and as long as I'm going to church, and as long as I'm putting tithe in the bucket, as long as I'm doing these things, I can appease God. That's what he wants from me. He just wants some good behavior, and then his grace will just cover the rest, and I'll just then figure out, and we live by the scripture that's not a scripture, but we treat it. God blesses those who bless themselves, or God helps those who help themselves. Okay? So that's totally not the word of God. And so what the Lord is doing is he's bringing us back. And he's reviving us in a place of, I need you to go back and get a right view of who I am, so that you can get a right view of yourself, so that you can become who I've created you to be, so that we can be one and be in relationship. So I want to go clear back to the garden. I want to start here in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. As we were talking about fruitfulness, as the Lord's been speaking to me about fruitfulness for a long time, but specifically He's been talking to me a lot about fruitfulness and abiding, and He brought this back to me. So Genesis 1:28, 1:27 is Him talking about as the Trinity. It says, let us make man in our image, in our likeness. And it says God made them in His image, man and woman. And then in verse 28, He gives them a blessing. Say a blessing. It's not a commandment, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. Say blessing again. it starts out and says, and God blessed them in his love, saying. Now, I actually have the Passion Translation in Genesis, which is awesome. Thank you, Carla. And so I actually went to the Passion Translation, and I really loved what he said here. He adds on, and he says the Aramaic, the Hebrew Aramaic of this, where it says God blesses them, he says the whole connotation of the blessing is his lavished love. His lavished love. Anytime that God is blessing you, it's coming straight from his lavishing love. And God blessed them in his love, saying, now, this is the blessing. Reproduce, be fruitful, populate the earth, and subdue it. Okay, this is a blessing. We're learning how to see commandments in a different way. We're learning how to see the things that God says, the mandates that he makes, not as a to-do list, but as a promise. This isn't about the 10 commandments are actually the 10 promises. The 10 commandments are actually the 10 promises. I'm not intending to spend a whole lot of time here, but I want you to grab hold of this because we're going to talk about what it means to actually obey God. Because we just turned all of these things that he said into a list of to-dos and don't-dos. And then we thought, well, as long as I'm doing these things and not doing these things, then I'm okay. And God and I are in relationship. But actually what the 10 commandments are, and if you're starting the Abba journey, you'll be reading in this fairly soon. It's a powerful thing. That these are the 10 promises. He's saying this: you will not have any other gods before me. That's I'm with you. We're designed for relationship. In relationship, you won't even have the desire to have any other God before me. You will come to the realization that I'm the real deal. I'm the true thing. And therefore the promise is you won't even be tempted to go and bow down to another idol. You won't even be drawn to another lover. That's really what it is. You won't even be drawn to another lover. You will not have any idols before me. You won't take my name in vain. These are promises of what will happen in right relationship with the Father. I don't want to spend too much time there. I want to come back to Genesis 1:28. I'm going to say he gives them 4 things as a blessing. These are promises. You will reproduce, you will be fruitful, you will populate the earth, and you will subdue it. That is the plan. This is the blessing. This is the purpose that we have. In relationship with him, he is the God who blesses and he brings multiplication into our lives. Look at what Jesus did. Jesus lifted up a boy's lunch and blessed it. And what did it do? It multiplied. It became fruitful. So this is what we're talking about in fruitfulness. That fruitfulness is solely and only a byproduct of oneness with the Father. And we just get to go around blessing things because that's what our Father does, and he brings multiplication to it. So here's what we want. We want to pursue a deeper level of connectedness with Abba and understand that our fruitfulness is only produced through abiding. Say abiding. So we're going to go right back to John 15, and I'm going to read through the first 17 verses, and we're going to come back and get some nuggets out of here. So we've probably read this, 40 times at least over the last few months. But I'm just going to read the first 17 verses of John. Jesus said, I am a true sprouting vine. The farmer who tends the vine is my Father. He cares for the branches connected to me by lifting and propping up the fruitless branches and pruning every fruitful branch to yield a greater harvest. The words I have spoken over you have already cleansed you. So you must remain in life union with me, for I remain in life union with you. Notice, he's remaining in us. For as a branch severed from the vine will not bear fruit, so your life will be fruitless unless you live your life intimately joined to mine. I'm the sprouting vine, and you're my branches. As you live in union with me as your source, fruitfulness will stream from within you. But when you live separated from me, you are powerless. If a person is separated from me, he's discarded. Such branches are gathered up and thrown into the fire to be burned. But if you live in union, life union with me, and if my words live powerfully within you, then you can ask whatever you desire, and it will be done. When your lives bear abundant fruit, you demonstrate that you are my mature disciples who glorify my Father. I love each of you with the same love that the Father loves me. You must continually let my love nourish your hearts. If you keep my commands, you will live in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands. For I continually live nourished and empowered by his love. My purpose for telling you these things is so that the joy that I experience will fill your hearts with overflowing gladness. So this is my command: love each other deeply as much as I have loved you. For the greatest love of all is a love that sacrifices all, and this great love is demonstrated when a person sacrifices his life for his friends. You show that you are my intimate friends when you obey all that I command you. I've never called you servants because a master doesn't confide in his servants. The servants don't always understand what the master's doing, but I call you my most intimate friends. For I reveal to you everything that I've heard from my Father. You didn't choose me, but I've chosen and commissioned you to go into the world to bear fruit, and your fruit will last, because whatever you ask of my Father for my sake, he will give it to you. So this is my parting command. Thank you, Holy Spirit. I love it when he does that. He's like, no, you're going to say this. All right. Love one another deeply. All right. This is a huge passage of Scripture, and there's many things that we have missed in this over the years. I know I missed them, and I don't know how many times I've read this particular chapter, let alone how many times I've read through the Bible, But this passage right here is really John's description of the life and relationship that we were always intended to have with God. First of all, Jesus gives this picture of a farmer. And we immediately connect with, okay, I see a farmer, I see a dude in coveralls out in the field, maybe some muck boots, carrying a shovel or a rake or something, or he's sitting on his tractor or doing something. We get this picture of what a farmer looks like. And Jesus goes on to say, that farmer is my Father. The farmer is my Father. Say that. The farmer is my Father. So we have to get a picture of the farmer. So the family business is fruitfulness. And the father is focused as a farmer on fruitfulness. And we know that it's a family because Jesus is using the term father. It's not just a business. This is the family, and this is what the family does. So the farmer who tends the vine is my Father. What does tending the vine mean? Well, we read that in verse 2. He cares for the branches connected to me. By lifting and propping up the fruitless branches and pruning every fruitful branch to yield a greater harvest. So get this picture. There are branches that are hanging low and typically covered by some of the other branches. God wants every branch to bear fruit, and so he takes and he props up. Now, the King James said he cuts off, but that's not what he does. He doesn't cut it off. He actually props it up, and he brings it up into the light, into where it can get nourished. And Holly was listening to a thing this morning from Graham Cook, and he starts talking about this abiding word. And the word there in the Greek of the propping up, that's the word arrow. Not arrow like bow and arrow. It's A-I-R-O, I think. And so he props it up. And the point is that the sap or the life the juice, the life juice that feeds the vine or feeds a tree, that life. It's like the blood that flows through us. So that sap can only rise up to the highest place. So if the branches are laying low, the sap is not actually reaching and doing what it's supposed to do to become fruitful. So what happens? You lift up the branch, you prop it up, and the sap is able to go all the way up to the end where the fruit is produced. And this is what God is doing. You may not have an area of fruitfulness in your life, but I'm going to prop you up. I'm going to lift you up, and I'm going to support you so that you will begin to bear fruit. Then, for those other places where he talks about, in the next sentence, he says, and he will prune every fruitful branch to yield a greater harvest. So, the mark of actual fruitfulness is pruning. The proof that you're being fruitful is that you're being pruned. And what we've done a lot of times, thank you, Holly. What we've done a lot of times is we have experienced some pruning from the Lord, and we're like, hey, wait a minute. I thought you loved me. I thought this was okay. Wait a minute. I thought we were good. And we're experiencing some pruning, and what he's actually doing is he's loving us. He says, yes, you are bearing fruit, but let's go for the more. Because he's always wanting to yield a greater harvest. So what we have to learn how to do is embrace the pruning process. I did not do that well for a long time. And until the Lord in 2015 spoke to me and said, Jeremy, I need you to embrace hardships as the pathway to peace. And I argued with him about how I was embracing them. And he said, no, you're not embracing them. You actually are resenting every hardship that you're experiencing right now, and I'm really wanting to do some pruning in you so that we can produce a bigger harvest, because you're fruiting all over the place, buddy, and we're gonna go for the more. And I was so satisfied with the fruit I was producing. I'm like, what more do you want from me? And he said that I need you to embrace with joy this process. And I'll tell you that in the year 2016, I really allowed the Lord to be the Lord of the harvest for me. And it changed everything. I went through a massive transformation in that year. And the Lord began to do some incredible work, miraculous work. So the point of this is that the Lord is always caring for the vine. Who's doing the work? The Father's doing the work. He's the farmer. He's tending. Jesus is saying, I'm the vine. My Father is the farmer, and he's always caring for me, the vine, and the branches that are connected to me. We've taken this scripture in religion, and we've said, I have to bear fruit. I have to bear fruit. If I don't bear fruit, I'm going to be cut off and thrown into the fire. That's what we hear. That's what we've taken on. But what we have to understand is fruit bearing is actually the work of the Father. He's the one lifting and propping. He's the one pruning. We're just saying yes. We're just saying, we're submitting, we're surrendering, we're coming into agreement with the work that he's doing. All right, we got to move on. It gets better, guys. Jesus goes on to say, the words I have spoken over you have already cleansed you. That word cleansed is actually the word that would be used for pruning or preparing. So what he's giving a hint to the disciples, he's telling them, the things I've already taught you and told you about the Father have already started the pruning process. The revelation and the truth that you're receiving from me is already doing some cutting and some lifting. It's already doing that because we're going to learn this, because every word that I'm speaking to you has come from the Father. And we're going to see that. So he says, you must remain in life union with me. And he wants his words, if we skip down to verse 6, he tells us that if my words live powerfully within you, then you can ask whatever you desire and it will be done. Now that's fruitfulness. That's fruitfulness. That's fruitfulness. So the command that he tells us to be fruitful is actually a promise. It's actually a promise. Because he always intended for us to be one and connected with him. He goes on to say, any person that's disconnected me, if you don't remain in me, you will be fruitless. You are powerless to do anything apart from me. You have to stay connected to the vine. This is your life source. Your oneness with me is where you get life. It's where you get life. He goes on to say in verse 8, when your lives bear abundant fruit, you demonstrate that you're my mature disciples who glorify my Father. So let's just talk about this command or this promise, be fruitful. I want everyone to close your eyes. And we're going to talk about what the fruit is. We're going to look, it tells us to bear fruit. Well, what is the fruit? So I want you to visualize an apple tree. And I want you to recognize, what is that tree made to produce? Apples. That tree doesn't have to think about what kind of fruit it's going to produce. That tree didn't have to have a 5-step plan or a book to read to figure out how he was going to be fruitful. That tree was born to bear the fruit of an apple. Multiple apples, season after season. And he was created and designed to do that. So you and I are created in the image of God. What is the fruit that God produces? God is love. God is love. The fruit is love. So the fruit that we're going to concentrate on is... So we're going to go into that a little bit deeper, but I want to back up a little bit. I just wanted to give you a picture when we're talking about bearing fruit. The fruit that we're going to understand that we were created to produce is love. Period, end of sentence. Love. And we'll get a bigger revelation of that. Jesus says, I love each of you with the same love that the Father loves me. You must continually let my love nourish your hearts. If you keep my commands, you will live in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands. For I continually live nourished and empowered by his love. So here's the hint. Jesus says, I've kept all the commands. I keep all the commands. Why? Because I live continually nourished by his love. If you want to learn how to fulfill the commands or the promises or the things that God has spoken to you, then you must continually live nourished by his love. Connection. Disconnection will always lead us to fruitlessness. Disconnection will always lead us to dead leaves and dryness and weariness and limp branches. Verse 12, this is my command, love each other deeply as much as I have loved you. For the greatest love of all is a love that sacrifices all. And this great love is demonstrated when a person sacrifices his life for his friends. You show that you are my intimate friends when you obey all that I command you. I have never called you servants because a master doesn't confide in the servants. And the servants don't always understand what the master is doing. Here's what I want you to get out of this right here. God has taken and placed his very presence, his very spirit inside of you, so that you will always know what he's doing. So that you will always understand. He is the spirit of wisdom and revelation. You and I are positioned in the spirit to always be receiving wisdom and revelation, to know what the Father's doing, so that we can respond to his love and to his words that he's speaking. Jesus goes on to say, I revealed to you everything that I've heard from my Father. You didn't choose me, but I chose you and commissioned you. I want you to understand that this abiding thing and fruitfulness, this is something that we do with God. It's not something that we say, okay, God, I'm going to get your love, and then I'm going to go bear some fruit. It's that He is continually pouring out his love and his presence, his words on us, and then we go out together. I'm not separating myself from the vine to go be fruitful. I'm doing this with God. It's a co-mission. It's a co-mission. We have been co-missioned. He's not leaving you to go do it on your own. He's saying, let's do this together. I want to be one with you in this. I've chosen you and to do this with me. I want to partner with you to go into all the world to bear fruit. And your fruit will last. Remember, we're the tree. That's fruit is always in season. That's lasting fruit. He's not just talking about an apple that never rots. He's saying that your fruit will continually be always moving forward. It's a continuous fruitfulness that never runs out and never runs dry because our roots grow down deep into the stream that flows from the very presence of God. He is our source of life. He is our source of fruitfulness. Whatever you ask of my Father for my sake, He will give to you. So pruning is proof of fruitfulness. The Father is propping and pruning for more fruit. The fullness of fruitfulness is freely giving yourself away to others. I'm going to say that again. The fullness of fruitfulness is freely giving yourself away to others. How do we know that? Jesus said this, for the greatest love, remember, what's our fruit? What's our fruit? The greatest love of all is a love that sacrifices all. And this great love is demonstrated when a person sacrifices his life for his friends. This is you coming to a place of fullness and fruitfulness where your connection with Abba, your connection in the Trinity, the circle dance of love, the oneness of the life that He's living that you've been brought up into is that now, just like your Father, just like your family, you get to freely give yourself away without any thought to the cost, without any thought to what you're going to get back in return. You are so full of love, so full of joy, so full of peace, you can freely give it away. And we see that demonstrated in Jesus' life. Everywhere He went, He was just giving away, just giving of Himself, giving away, especially to those that don't deserve. When Jesus speaks of keeping His commandments, it's always in the context of a loving, nurturing relationship. So let's talk about the fruit of love. Fruit is love. For us, we are made in the image of God. God is love. Therefore, we produce after our kind fruit that is love. Let's go to Galatians chapter 5. And we touched on this last week as we were talking about fruitfulness. And I'm going to focus specifically on the Passion Translation because this is what he says. He says, but the fruit produced by the Holy Spirit within you is divine love in all its varied expressions. So we've been learning that the Father's love has all these divine expressions, including wrath, including judgment, including sovereignty, including jealousy. Those are all expressions of His love because He's jealous for any other lover that would have your heart. He's wrathful towards anything that would cause disconnection between you and Him. And His judgments are against anything that would disconnect you from Him. So in the same way, the Spirit produces love in us in all these varied expressions. So here it is. Joy that overflows. We just read that in John 15. I say these things to you so that your joy will overflow. My joy is overflowing. I want your joy to overflow. What's the joy He's giving us? His joy. He says, my joy is full. I want you to be full. Abide in me. You'll produce love that expresses itself in joy that overflows. Peace that subdues. How many of you know Jesus as the Prince of Peace? Okay, when we read actually this earlier in Genesis, that we were to populate the earth and subdue it. Same word. So this peace that subdues is a conquering word. This is like a military word. And so this is where it talks about, I can't remember the scripture, but it talks about letting the peace of Christ rule and reign in your heart. Let the peace of Christ rule and reign. Let it dwell in you. Let it come and subdue the anxiety that you have there. This is love that subdues through peace. Patience that endures. We see that promise in James chapter 1. Talks about patient endurance working itself out in us. And when patient endurance has worked itself out completely in us, we'll be perfect, lacking nothing. Huge promise in James chapter 1. But what do we have to do? We have to patiently endure. Embrace hardship as your pathway to peace. Patiently endure. Thank you, Dad. Is that the let the peace of Christ? Yeah, thank you. Rule and reign. So love also expresses itself in kindness in action. Here's the giving. We begin to give ourselves away. Kindness in action. It's his kindness that leads us to repentance or draws us to repentance. Think about that. Think about that. And in our kindness to other people, what do we begin doing? We begin drawing them into that place of repentance. We begin drawing them into that place like, oh, you mean God's not pissed off at me? Oh, you mean God doesn't want to smash me? Oh, you mean God's not ashamed of me? What are you talking about? No, he's drawing you in with this kindness. I'm just going to kind all over you. Come here, let me give you a hug and tell you how kind your Father is. Kindness in action. A life full of virtue. That's right behaving, right living, right things, virtuous things. Faith that prevails, that's believing beyond. That takes us, there's a love that causes us to believe. There's a love that causes us to have faith. There's a love that gives us confidence. That's a huge thing here. God's love for you is designed to make you the most confident person on the earth. You never question anything. You never have to worry. You're so confident in the promises of God. You're so confident in your position in the Lord. You're unshakable. Gentleness of heart. Strength of spirit. I like that. Instead of self-control, don't just control yourself. Just be strong in spirit. This is the expressions of love that Holy Spirit produces in you. And he goes on to say, never set the law above these qualities, for they're meant to be limitless. Talk about fruitfulness. This love is meant to be limitless in its expressions through you and I as we abide in the Father. All right, let's talk about the gifts. So we know the fruit of the Spirit is love. And I'm going to talk out of 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And Paul is teaching about the gifts of the Spirit. Now, I really love the whole thing, and we teach this in Elevate too. I love the fact that there's 9 fruit and there's 9 gifts, and God's really cool in the symmetry and all the things that he shows me, and that lemons are typically, they have like 9 segments, and I'm like, oh, even the fruit is in the fruit. That's pretty cool. So, but we look at the gifts, and I'm not going to go through all the gifts. Well, yes, I am. Let's just read it. So I'm actually going to start in the end of chapter 12 into chapter 13. After he gets done telling them all the gifts that the Spirit does in chapter 12, this is what he ends. This is the last verse of chapter 12. It's verse 31. It says this, but you should all constantly boil over with passion in seeking the higher gifts. What are the higher gifts? Well, let's find out. And now I will show you a superior way to live that is beyond comparison. If I were to speak with eloquence in the earth's many language and in the heavenly tongues of angels, yet I didn't express myself with love, my words would be reduced to the hollow sound of nothing more than a clanging cymbal. And if I were to have the gift of prophecy with the profound understanding of God's hidden secrets, and if I possessed the unending supernatural knowledge, and if I had the greatest gift of faith that could move mountains, but have never learned to love, then I am nothing. If I were to be so generous as to give away everything I owned and feed the poor and to offer my body to be burned as a martyr without pure motive of love, I would gain nothing in value. Paul just gets done telling them the power of the gifts of the Spirit, and now he starts talking about them in comparison to love. He said, you can have all of these things. They are gifts to you that come to you through the Spirit, but if you don't do them with the motive and the source of love, it's nothing. It's garbage. It's worthless. It has no lasting power or lasting fruit. I will tell you that in my own life, I went after the gifts of the Spirit because I was so desperate for the power. And what God was trying to teach me is, I just want you to love. Will you just love? Recognizing that you can't love until you've been loved first. John tells us that. It's not that we love God, but that He loves us first. Jesus displayed this. I'll talk about it in a minute. Here's some homework for you guys. I wrote it on the page. I want you, if you want to understand the love that we're talking about here, go read verses 4 through 9 of chapter 13. We've talked about that multiple times in this place, but this is the love chapter. If you want to learn about the love that God loves with and the love that we're supposed to produce, this is it. So do that on your own time and meditate in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 9. I want to jump down to verse 10. So just underline that or make a note of it. Take your paper with you. Verse 10 says, but when love's perfection arrives, the partial will fade away. When I was a child, I spoke about childish matters, for I saw things like a child and reasoned like a child. But the day came when I matured, and I set aside my childish ways. For now we see but a faint reflection of riddles and mysteries as though reflected in a mirror. But one day we will see face to face. My understanding is incomplete now, but one day I will understand everything, just as everything about me has been fully understood. Until then, there are three things that remain: faith, hope, and love. Yet love surpasses them all. So above all else, let love be the beautiful prize for which you run. Do you notice that he talks about in the verse 10, when love's perfection arrives, the partial will fade away, and then he begins talking about maturity. When I was a child, I thought like a child, I acted like a child, but then I put away childish things because I'm pursuing the perfection of love. See, a child is always in a state of need. A child is always in a state of relying on its needs to get met all the time. And they're thinking about their needs getting met all the time. They're completely focused on themselves and their own survival. And so much of us, this is what we do. We come to the Lord, but we're so focused on just trying to get our needs met that we don't recognize that I can mature up into love where He declares over me, I take care of the flowers, I take care of the birds. How much more precious are you to me than them? You have nothing to worry about. So love is the measure of maturity. I'm going to say that again. Love is the measure of maturity. The greatest commandment out of Mark, I've been reading it out of Mark. I memorized it out of Matthew 22:37, but I've been really going back to Mark chapter 12, where Jesus says, all the law and all the prophets, everything can be summed up in this command. This is the greatest command. This is the greatest promise. You are to love the Lord Yahweh, your God, with every passion of your heart, with all the energy of your being, with every thought that is within you, and with all your strength. This is the great and supreme commandment. And the second is this: you must love your neighbor in the same way that you love yourself. You will never find a greater commandment than these. Put that in the context of a promise. If we know that we can't love God unless we're receiving love from Him, this is a promise of Jesus. As you're receiving love from the Father, you're going to love. You're going to love. You're going to love, I'm going to read this again. You're going to love with every passion of your heart. You're going to love with all the energy of your being. You're going to love with every thought that is within you and with all of your strength. This is my promise to you in abiding, in oneness with me. 1 Corinthians chapter 14 starts out with this. In the New Living Translation, I love it. It says this, let love be your highest goal. He sums up everything. Let love be your highest goal. And I love how Paul sandwiches between 12 and 14. He's all about love. He kind of unwraps, again in chapter 14, he unwraps about how you are to use the gifts to love the body. And I want you to yearn for the things, I want you to press in for the things that are going to bless the body. What's going to bless the body? Love. What's going to fill the body? Love. What's going to mature the body? Love. What's going to heal the body? Love. In verse 12, Paul's talking about what actually happens in the church, and we see this everywhere. He says, and that's what's happening among you. You're so passionate about embracing the manifestations of the Holy Spirit, but now become even more passionate about the things that strengthen the entire church. Don't be focused on the gifts. The gifts are a byproduct of abiding. The gifts are going to come as you love, as you're fruitful. We're to produce fruit before we produce gifts. Because if we've got gifts and no fruit or no love, it says we're worthless. We're just a bunch of noise. You got nothing without love. I hear the Lord singing, all we need is love. La, da, 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 da. All we need is love. All we need is love. Love. Love is all we need. The Father is love and nothing other. Love is the fruit of the Spirit, and love is the greatest gift of the Spirit. Love is our aim. I want to read you. I'm going to wait on that. This is a quote from Graham Cook that my dad posted a couple days ago. I told him I was going to use it today. It says this, the fruit of the Spirit is more potent weapon against the enemy than the gifts, because the fruit of the Spirit is who I am inside. Beloved. The fruit is more powerful than the gifts because the fruit is who I am inside. If I'm made in the image of God, what's the fruit I bear? Love. I'm created to be love, just like the Father is love. So let's go back and look at Jesus. Jesus is our mark. He is the thing that we focus on, and I want to close on this. Jesus displays this thing called abiding, and he's telling us the only way that you're going to bear fruit is abiding, and he teaches us and shows us this. He makes two statements in John 15 about himself. He says, for as a branch severed from the vine will not bear fruit, so your life will be fruitless unless you live your life intimately joined to mine. He goes on to say in verse 5, the second half, he says, but when you live separate from me, you are powerless. Jesus himself, if we go back earlier in John, he talks about himself. He says in chapter 5, starting at verse 19, I'm just going to read a couple verses. It says, so Jesus said, I speak you a timeless truth. I mean, this is the truth that lasts forever. The Son is not able to do anything from himself or through his own initiative. I only do the works that I see the Father doing, for the Son does the same works as the Father. Because the Father loves his Son so much, he always reveals to me everything that he is about to do. And you will all be amazed when he shows me even greater works than what you've seen so far. So here's the picture. Jesus is saying, again, this is a promise. This isn't Jesus saying, I'm limited, I can't do anything unless the Father gives me permission to do it. What he's saying is, I'm continually connected to the Father. I'm nourished by the Father. We're commissioned to do this thing. He didn't just kick me out into the earth and said, all right, son, go clean up the mess. I'll see you on the other side. He did this with him, in him. They did it together. Father, Son, and Spirit. They did it together as one. They have always done everything as one. They cannot do anything apart from each other because they're one. Because they are one. Jesus is saying, I don't do anything by myself because the Father and I are always one. It's impossible for me to be my own thing because we're connected. I only do the things I see the Father doing. Why? Because we have the same eyes. I only do the things my Father's doing. Why? Because we're one and we do it together. If I step right, he steps right. If I step left, he steps left. If I jump up and down and go hallelujah, he jumps up and down and goes hallelujah. We're one. This is what he's talking about here. He's trying to let them know. He's trying to let them know this is how you are to function. He's trying to show them, not just speak to them, but show them that he and the Father are one, and that when you look at him, you see the Father. Later on in chapter 8, further, just a couple of chapters later, Jesus again is talking. By the way, he's telling this to the church. He's speaking to the Pharisees because they're pissed off at his miracles. They're mad because they can't control him. And they don't know, like, this kid from Nazareth, now he's doing weird stuff. Now he's making us look bad. He's got all these people following him. Jesus says in verse 28 of John 8, you will know me as I am after you have lifted me up from the earth. That word I am there is the same as what Moses at the burning bush, when God said to Moses, I am the I am. That's the same. In the Greek, it's the same as the Hebrew. Jesus, that's what he was saying there. You will know me as I am after you have lifted me up from the earth as the Son of Man. That word lifting up, there's two meanings here. One, he's prophesying about being lifted up on the cross. Two, he's also prophesying that when you lift him up in your life, you will know him for who he really is. When you exalt him up, when you bring him up above every other thing in your life, above every other relationship, above every other thing, where he's at the forefront importance of your life, he said, you will know me and see me for who I really am. And then you will realize, what's the bigger revelation? You will realize that I do nothing on my own initiative, but I only speak the truth that the Father has revealed to me. Back to John 15, Jesus says, for I live continually nourished and empowered by his love. I continually live. This is an unending thing. I don't stop. I want to read from the Foundations of Sonship. I've been meditating. I had to put the book down for a while, and the Lord told me I could pick it up again. So I've been meditating on it, and immediately I flipped open the book, and he brought me right to fruitfulness, which was rad, because I was already writing the message for this week, and he's like, here, you need this. All right, I want you guys to listen to this. The Son, this is speaking of Jesus, the Son's custom was to awaken early in the morning and spend time listening to the Father. Jesus' own testimony was that he didn't say anything unless he first heard the Father say it. In other words, Jesus received the Father's love by abiding in, watching over, and nurturing, carefully protecting the words the Father spoke to him. Why are God's words so important? Because when he speaks, he creates. His words impart the reality of what he says. Jesus tells us that his words are spirit and they are life. Jesus receives the life and the love of the Father through the Father's words, and likewise, you and I receive the life and love of the Father through the Father's words spoken to us by Jesus. And if we will make our home in these words and let these words of reality, not just scriptures, make our home in us, then the whole world opens up to us and we can ask whatever we will, and it will be done for us. So there's two things that I want us to focus on. Well, not just two things. There's two places of abiding. We're abiding in His presence, and we're abiding in His words, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. We must be able to receive the Father's love and abide in that love through oneness in Jesus by the Holy Spirit before we will ever be able to bear fruit and walk in obedience consistently. We have to, this is the revelation. We have to get the revelation of His love for us. Carrie Wood says, we must receive the Father's love or we will try to obey for the wrong reasons. We abide in His presence, in His love and care, and also in His words. This is what the Holy Spirit spoke to me about His words. This is rhema. This is promises. This is affirmation. And then He gave me a third thing, and He spoke and He said, it's His protection. See, one of the things that God wants you to know that abiding in Him brings you, Psalm 91 tells you that abiding in Him brings you into perfect protection, where nothing and no one can touch you. But it has to stem from those that abide in the shadow of the Almighty. That you're so close to Him. You've come under His wing. You're under His shadow. Spend some time in Psalm 91 this week. So we're abiding in His presence. We're abiding in His words. The words He's speaking, not just the words He's written, His promises. And then I thought about this. When He talks about, I believe it's Psalm 139, where David is talking about God's precious thoughts towards him. Your precious thoughts towards me outnumber the grains of sand on all the seashores. And then I thought about His words of affirmation over us are those precious thoughts. He's thinking about it and He's speaking them continually over you. And it's not just, I love you. It's myriads and myriads, innumerable amount of affirmations and blessings and delights that He's speaking over you. So stand up. I've got 3 questions for you. Which comes first? Loving God or receiving His love? Which comes first? Loving God or receiving His love? Good, you were listening. Number 2, which comes first? Fruitfulness or abiding in the Father's love? Good. Which comes first? Obeying the Father's words or abiding in the Father's words? Here's why. When you abide in the words, you'll know what He's saying and why He's saying it. And when you abide in the words, you're meditating on the heart behind it. You're not just getting a command and then doing your best to accomplish that command. You're hearing the heart of the Father about what He's saying. And then you get to respond from the heart of the situation, from the fruit of love, instead of just from a command to do. I want you guys to stretch out your hands, and we're going to make this declaration. Here's what I want you to know. Wherever you're at in your walk with God, in your relationship with God, I want you to understand something. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Some of you have felt like you don't know how to receive His love. He feels really far away. And you're going through things, or you've had moments, or you're even in a moment right now where you feel like that is too far. Like, I don't know how to receive that. So I see two things. The first one, I heard the Holy Spirit say, if you're struggling with that, He says in the Spirit, just look inside. The Lord's going to give you right now, through His Spirit, He's going to give you a picture right now of what He has placed inside of you that is something that you get to carry with you, something that connects you to Him intimately. I saw a couple things. I'm not going to call them out, but I saw like multiple things that the Lord was giving you guys a picture of that were representative, like it's something between just you and Him. And when you see it, you're going to know, oh my goodness, it's in me. I'm not grasping, I'm not reaching. I already have it. I just need to rest in it. I just need to believe. I need to stop thinking it's out there, but it's actually in me. The second thing I heard the Holy Spirit say, it was actually Jesus speaking, and Jesus said, if you're having troubles believing for the love, at least believe in the miracle that I'm doing right now, or the miracle that I've done. This is Jesus saying, if you're having trouble believing me right now, at least believe the miracles I've done. And I hear the Lord saying, I've done some miraculous things in your life, and they were my love pursuing you and chasing you down. I hear the Holy Spirit saying right now, there were times when you should have died, and I came in, and I kept you alive, and I kept you breathing, just like that little baby. Whew. Just like that little baby who was declared dead and put in the morgue. My love has been life to you. So those two things, he's either telling you look inside, or he's telling you to remember miracles that he's done in your life. And in that place, that's a starting point for you to step into the love of the Father. All right, here's what we're going to declare. All that the Father has is now mine. His life is now my life. His love is now my love. His passion for creation is now my passion. I am learning to abide in the fullness of His love. Obedience is no longer a byproduct of my fear, drudgery, accountability groups, or external rules and regulations. Now, my obedience streams from the heart of a loving and passionate and joy-filled relationship with my Father. This is the reality of what is ours and who we are. And this is what God is saying. If we will take the time to abide, if we will rest in this, if we will sit in this, if we will soak in this, if we will stop allowing anxiety to draw us away, if we will stop thinking that I'm too dirty, or I can't attain this, or I have to do, then these are things that are causing us to walk away from the place of abiding. So the Lord wants to bring fruitfulness into your life through abiding in massive ways. And the beautiful thing is that it's not just love we give away, it's love He's absolutely lavishing on us, so we can't help but give it away. Let's stretch our hands out and bless the day today. I want to encourage you, the Lord is giving you opportunities every day to practically love on people in very real ways, to practically pour out love, to have a word of encouragement, to put a few dollars in their gas tank, to pay for the coffee for the person behind you. There's lots of ways for you to pay it forward, to begin to be a vessel of the love that God is pouring out on you. Don't do it as a religious act. Don't do it to make yourself feel better. Do it because you're responding. Do it in response to the love that the Lord is pouring out on you. All right, let's bless the day. The Lord blesses you and keeps you. The Lord smiles down on you and shows you his kindness. The Lord answers your prayers and he gives you his peace. The Lord covers you with his name. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Today is fun and powerful. Be blessed.
Father, you're so faithful. You're so holy. You're so perfect. You're so near. You're so near. You're so close. We acknowledge